I think absolutely we need an officer development strategy in the context of an overall leader development strategy. I do think that what's happened in particularly the last 8 years, as we've made whatever adjustments were necessary to make to meet the demands of the current fight, we've done that extraordinarily well. But I think if we are truly in an era of persistent conflict, and I believe we are. I mean, I talk in terms of being in year 8 of a 30 years war, and we could discuss why I believe that. But if we're in year 8 of a 30 years war, then you can't continue to make adjustments to the needs of the current fight without understanding what the impact of those adjustments are over the longer term. The issue of a leader development, and in this case an officer strategy, has to start at accession. We've placed, in my view, an over-reliance on OCS as a commissioning source. It's always important for me to clarify what I mean by an over-reliance. I mean, I am very much in favor of an OCS component for our officer strategy. But as you know, there are at least two problems with it. One is that you harvest some of those candidates and cadets from the non-commissioned officer corps, which itself is a separate component of our leader development strategy. And secondly, if you do harvest some of them, they come to you as officers with approximately 10 years of service and become retirement eligible 10 years later. And so you create the conditions for the kind of bathtub effect that we've seen, which we experienced in this decade because of decisions taken on selective early retirements and so forth in the 90s. And so we just need to steady this out. You know, there's so many factors related to retention. I'll mention some of them and tell you that, what I really think it comes down to. One of them is predictability in their career. And it's their thirst to contribute. So, for example, one of the manifestations of over-accessing second lieutenants, which we have on occasion, is you put them into a unit, and because the unit is holding on to their lieutenants and captains because of the R4 Gen cycle, because we have no policy on how long a branch qualified job can be or must be and should not exceed, you'll find lieutenants on occasion being assistant platoon leaders, which of course is very deflating as they come out of places like West Point and ROTC, believe they're going in to become leaders. So there's some personal policies we just got to get at that allow them to feel that they're contributing. Secondly, they want to know that there are other opportunities to them intermittently or periodically or episodically through their career. So although they are they're dedicated, they're courageous, they're committed, they want to be in the fight, they also want to know that that's not all they're going to do. The one that it really comes down to, when I talk to the young kids who are getting out of the United States Army, generally speaking, it does come down to leadership. It's the leaders to which they've been exposed or to whom they've been exposed. And it's uncanny. That particular issue is unchanged in our history. Now, it may be more visible to us now because the leaders to whom they're exposed are themselves very visible and transparent in the kind of missions and operations we're conducting. So it's very difficult for a weak leader to blend in and to disguise him or herself, and particularly difficult to disguise themselves from their subordinates. The subordinates are very sharp. And so if they see someone who's in a leadership position, then they either lack respect or confidence in them. It does cause them to wonder about the profession. So we've got to figure out how to address that. And I find myself ambivalent about the specialist generalist debate, and it relates to the question of managing the Army's talents for the benefit of both the institution and the individual. I find myself ambivalent because at a time when there's let me use on the enlisted side, there's a proliferation of MOSs, especially as we try to come to grips with what we're going to do with cyber, what we're going to do with information ops, what we're going to do with electronic warfare, or whether it becomes cyber, electromagnetic. I mean, the conversations and the debates are ongoing and very heated. And my response to those debates about proliferating military occupational specialties In those conversations, I've expressed concern that if we become too specialized, we will miss the opportunity to challenge individuals to be more than one thing at a time. The issue of talent management, by the way, is, I can tell you, among the 4-stars was at our last session, was a very contentious issue because, well, it came up at the Army Training and Leader Development Conference. I don't know if any of you were there, but I found that some senior leaders, and it's not a place to name names, but some senior leaders are uncomfortable in an army at war telling the officer corps that somehow they're not all equal, and therefore they won't be managed equally. But that's the kind of discussion that has emanated from this paper, is if you're going to manage the Army's talent, how do you first recognize it? And then what do you do about it in adapting your policies, your personnel policies? And so it's a very healthy thing.